All right, guys, this is Craig Bullock. That's Just Bull. This is episode number 2 of hopefully what comes to hundreds of thousands. And my guest is a Tennessee Tech University head coach, Steve Smith. Hey, Coach.
What's up, Craig? How you doing, man?
Good. How are you doing? I'm going to share something to the guys who just tuned in or just starting it. Make sure I'm doing this. I need these glasses. We were talking about we were both sharing how we had faces for radio. And well, I couldn't agree more. I told you that I moved this iPad at every angle, and it just gets worse. Nothing gets better.
Well, you should get a smaller camera.
I need to just go radio. I'd probably make a good radio host. Well, I'm going to ask you a bunch of questions, and I'm excited about this one. You and I have a little bit of history, and we were talking. You and I met 30 years ago.
Yeah.
And I think you probably do a better job than I do, but I try to do a good job of staying in touch with the people, especially the ones I admire like yourself. And I'm glad I did. And I'm glad you're here doing this today. I appreciate it.
You bet. You know what I remember the most, though?
What's that?
For our listeners, I mean, I recruited Craig when I was a first-year assistant at Mississippi State.
Yep.
I lost him to Texas A&M, all right?
Yep.
They lost him to the MLB draft. But I got Christmas cards for years from George and Sue.
I know it.
I mean, I can't tell you if I can tell you any of the names of the parents of guys I didn't get. I have a hard enough time remembering the ones I did get. But your mom and dad, and I'm sure it was your mom, stayed in touch with me for so very long, and it meant a lot to me. So you pass along my well wishes to them. I hope they're good.
I will. So I don't know if I told you, unfortunately, my mother passed.
And I didn't know that.
Yeah, it was 2 years ago in January.
Oh, gosh.
She just started having heart issues. But I'm telling you, she was a fighter to the very end. To give you a quick story, as you know, she had a ton of personality, a ton.
Yep.
And probably 4 or 5 days before she passed, I brought my son in from college, and I said, "Hey, Mom, look who's here! It's Ryan, my oldest son." And she kind of gave her thumbs up like this, and I said, I said, "How does he look, Mom?" And she gave 2 thumbs up, and I said, "How do I look?" And she went like this. So even to the end, man, she was fantastic. She was a great mother.
That's awesome.
But we're going to bring up that you call them Sue and George here in a second. That stunned me. But let's talk about this thing at hand that's all over us right now, which is this coronavirus.
Okay.
And everybody healthy? Your family and all that?
Yes. Yes. Here in this county, this is Putnam County, Tennessee. I don't think, I'm not 100% on this, but I don't think we've got an active case. We're under, we're like most places, restaurants are carry out only, and there's a lot of the non-essentials are closed down and stuff like that. The university is handling it, I think, maybe a little differently than a lot. Today started online classes, so the whole university's gone online as of today. But I have, a few guys, a few players that are back here that are on campus in their dorm. There's not many of them, just 2 or 3. The majority of them are, they're back in town. They live off campus, and so they're in their apartments. They've got leases there, and then a few of them are at home. So I think there's a little more activity. I think our library on campus is still open. There's some dining services that are limited, kind of. So honestly, I think it's one of those situations where it just hasn't quite hit here like it has in a lot of other parts of the country.
Yeah, to say that we've never experienced this would be a first for any of us. And it's good to hear that your family's good. Mine's doing well as well. So how about how does this impact your team? I know this is your first year at Tennessee Tech. They're making decisions on seniors getting an extra year of eligibility. Have you thought about how that impacts your team, incoming freshmen? That's got to be, I guess, maybe a little confusing. Is it confusing at this time, or is that something that you'll figure out as you go along?
Well, this is not just my first year at Tennessee Tech. It's my first 2 months.
Yeah.
And so I got here January 6th. I inherited the ball club, tried to get to know them a little bit prior to starting. I think we played 15 games. You know, I learned it didn't take me 15 to learn we had a lot of issues, a lot of holes to fill.
Yeah.
And I felt like largely from a recruiting standpoint, you know, we were going to need to go junior college almost right off the bat because this needed an influx of step-in players, and it's really hard to get here in this time of the year. It's gonna be really hard to find a lot of high school guys that are ready, you know, step in ready. So we were in junior college recruiting mode when all of us got hit with the shutdown. And right after the shutdown, very quickly, the National Junior College Athletic Association made the decision that the NCAA is, I think, making today. They awarded the sophomores in junior college a third year. So all of a sudden, the guys we were actively recruiting now have an option to go back. Plus, there's just so many, you know, the confusing part, and the confusing is really not the word, I don't think, not for me. I think it's going to be pretty, it may be confusing for a lot of players, but this is what's going to happen. And I believe if I got my information correct before we started recording, that the NCAA Council voted today to grant an additional year to all players, not just the seniors, but every class. Okay. Now, that doesn't surprise me. You know, I thought the minimum they would do would be to grant it to the seniors. And that if they were really concerned about public perception, which the NCAA is very concerned about that, and I don't want to go down that rabbit hole too far since I still work for them. Right. But they wanted to do right by all players. So now what you're going to have is and they're going to have to make some accommodations, obviously, in terms of roster sizes, in terms of scholarship limitations. It's not enough just to say we give everybody an extra year. You're going to have to take some of the other constraints off too in order for that to actually happen. So, but for players, and that's where the biggest issue is going to be, you've got incoming players, and let's talk about the highest level of our game. Let's talk about the Power 5 guys, the ACC, the SEC, the PAC, you know, the Big 10, who am I leaving out? Big 12. All of these guys, you know, by and large, on the Division I level, they got the upper tier player. Yeah. Well, now all of a sudden, their rosters are going to go 45, 50. Well, it's not going to be an issue of them not having the money to continue their aid or something like that. It's going to be how many of them can they actually play. Mm-hmm. So you're going to have players there either coming in, you know, that were recruited that aren't there yet, or guys that were juniors thinking they were going to sign, and now the Major League Draft is going to be greatly reduced. So you're either going to have it on both ends. Guys are going to need to find somewhere to play, and that's where we are. You know, I look at our program right now here, literally almost like an expansion team in the big leagues. And I'm sure there are other mid-majors that may feel similar to me, but in my situation, coming here 2 months ago, seeing this thing right off the bat. We got major holes to fill. I'm trying to position us to be able to, hey, if there's guys out there in the Power Fives that, you know, they want an opportunity to play, and they want to have an opportunity to move on after they get done in college, then I want to be that spot.
Yeah.
So, you know, I hate that a virus, I hate people are losing lives, you know, to create a situation like this. And so I would never wish this situation at all. But it is one of those unintended consequences or, you know, just strange consequences that's going to come out of it.
Yeah, I think that's a good point because some people are put off if you speak about the world, I guess, from a macro level when the virus is going on. It's not that obviously the most important thing is everybody's lives, right? Nobody wants anybody to die. But at some level, we have to kind of prepare for when this thing returns and gets back to normal. And I think it will. We're all optimistic that it will. So that's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. Do you think they'll open up the number? You mentioned scholarships. Will they give you more, you think? Do you think the NCAA is going to give more scholarships?
Well, you know, before the virus thing actually hit, there was a proposal that was put forward by the SEC. And I say the SEC, I know it came out of a member school in the SEC. I'm not sure the SEC has formally supported it or not, but the proposal was to make the scholarships awarded to senior players not count against the 11.7. What happens in the Power 5 level, these guys there's a lot of their kids that are professional prospects. And so they get to that junior year and the coach doesn't really know what to do. Does he plan on that guy signing and recruit to replace him? Or does he bet on his coming back? And so coaches are put in a real predicament. And listen, guys are getting fired now. You're talking to one of them. And so, you know, the days of, you know, doing the right thing. What's the right thing? Is the right thing to, you know, I'm going to honor this kid's scholarship, and then all of a sudden he signs and I don't have a guy to replace him? Or is the right thing, you know what, I'm going to spend your money and you better get drafted and sign? And neither one of those are great for anybody, but that's the reality of the world of college baseball coaches at the highest level and really at every level, and then of the players themselves. So the proposal to be able to award seniors aid without it counting, all of a sudden that's a really good thing for both sides. That protects the player, you know, that if he wants to come back, if he gets drafted but it's just not the right situation, he can come back. He doesn't have to worry about the coach having spent his money. The coach doesn't have to worry about, you know, what to do and the stress of that, because coaches don't want to do that. Coaches don't want to non-renew a guy coming back, you know, his senior year. Nobody wants to do that.
Yeah.
But coaches also don't want to get fired. And so they're put in a predicament. So the proposal to actually be able to offer aid to seniors that wouldn't count, that was so timely in light of what's happening, because that's exactly what I think would be the situation now. I think the seniors, and again, I'm speaking a little out of turn because I haven't seen this officially, but I would assume it would only make sense to me that if you're going to grant the seniors an additional year, you're not going to be able to make their aid countable, or you're going to be cutting guys' aid that was coming in. You're going to be over 11.7. So I'm guessing that the aid to seniors won't count. Now it will just fall back on the individual institutions. What do they want to do? Do they want to honor the aid or not? And again, obviously there's a difference between the Power Fives and the mid majors and what kind of resources they have, and everybody's going to make their decisions based on, you know, what's in their own best interest at the school.
It'll be interesting to see how it plays out. Hopefully it works out well for everybody. I'm sure that's That's probably a little bit too optimistic, but we'll find out. I do want to go back all the way. And I have one question that goes all the way back to Mississippi College.
Okay.
That's where you went to school, right?
I went there as a freshman. Yep.
You went there as a freshman. Now,
Yep.
I want to ask you, what I want to ask you is, how good of a quarterback were you?
Well, not good enough to go where I wanted to go. And, you know, when I came out of junior high, I didn't think I was a football player at all, and I tried to quit. And I was just going to play baseball, you know, pretty common thing these days. But, you know, the old football coach in high school came down there and, you know, he kind of twisted my arm and told me he'd rather watch two people fish than watch a baseball game. And so I wound up playing, and I played with some great high school football players. Let me tell you, Bull, your state of Texas, I've been there a lot. They brag on their high school football.
Yes, they're proud of it.
But there are more NFL players per capita out of the state of Mississippi than there are anywhere in this country.
Wow.
And in my 3 years of high school football in Gulfport, Mississippi, down on the coast, I played with 7 guys who went to NFL camps. My junior year of high school, we won the state championship. Now, that's not the Texas 5A state championship, mind you, but we had 11 D1 signees on that team.
Yeah.
5 of them went in the SEC. So that's what I kind of got around when I got to be about a junior, senior. So I drank the Kool-Aid a little bit, and I wanted to see if I could go play football. And my dream school, if I had one back then, and some will laugh at this, was Mississippi State. Both my parents had gone to school there. And you know, I wanted to go there. Obviously, I wound up coaching there, which was a very surreal experience, coaching with Coach Polk. But to your question, I wasn't good enough to play there. So then I wanted to play college baseball at Mississippi State. Well, I wasn't good enough to do that, according to Coach Polk. I could come walk on, which, you know, if I
he was the coach then. Polk was the coach.
Oh yeah, Polk was recruiting me out of high school. Mark Johnson at A&M.
Yeah.
Mark Johnson at Texas A&M was the guy that signed you was the assistant there then. And so my whole coaching career goes back to Mark Johnson coming down to Biloxi, Mississippi when I'm a senior in high school and doing a hitting clinic. And I was a senior in the spring, and I wanted to go to Mississippi State. So I went over to this hitting clinic, and I listened to him talk hitting, shook his hand, and Bull, the next thing I know, 10 years later, I'm working for the guy at Texas A&M. I mean, it is a moving thing for me when I think about that decision that night to go to that clinic and the impact of that on me as a coach. But, you know, I don't want to answer your question about how good I was. The only nickname I ever got that I really liked was called the Locomotive. And I had one game at Mississippi College. We ran the veer back then. This was before the spread. I mean, I envy the opportunity to start running 7 yards behind the line of scrimmage. You know, when I was doing it, we were right under center, and I needed more starts. But I did have one game there at Mississippi College where I had 125 yards rushing on about 20 carries. And apparently the writer that day, you know, that inspired him to start calling it the Locomotive.
Locomotive.
Yeah, I wasn't. I don't know. Maybe Caboose was a bit more apropos, but Locomotive.
Well, I'm sure some of the people from Texas here, when they hear the shot at Texas football,
my boys played Texas football. My older one now, his last 2 games of high school football were in Jerry World. You know.
Oh yeah.
So,
I'm gonna get a lot of questions saying, "Hey man, them boys in Mississippi, do they play with 11 fellas on each side of the ball?" Or?
Absolutely, baby. We had pep rallies in the 4th grade, man. You dudes weren't doing that.
Yeah, you know Texas is nuts. I mean, it's nuts.
I do.
We have my son's high school's got a kid that's going to be a junior next year. I think he's ranked in the top 10 in the nation. He's going to be special.
He needs to go to North Carolina then. That's where my son's over there working as an offensive recruiting analyst for Mac Brown. And I bet you if you give me his name, I could say to Ryan, and he would know his name right now. I mean,
when we get off this podcast, I'll give it to you because
Okay.
I've seen him run, and I mean he was a sophomore, but he's real.
Yep.
He's a special kid. Yeah.
Mac loves recruiting Texas players. Let me tell you that.
Yeah. He would like this kid. He projects very well. Very well. So you went on. You had a pro career with the San Francisco Giants, right?
Everywhere but San Francisco.
Everywhere but San Francisco. A lot of people can relate. But I did see your rookie ball numbers were real.
Thank you.
You had some real numbers, man.
Yeah, I went from being a guy,
Yeah.
a prospect, a guy to not a guy in about a year. And I hurt my arm right before I went to spring training, right after rookie ball, my first spring training. I was that guy that threw too much.
Yeah.
Love to throw. Today it serves me well. I throw BP like it's nobody's business, and I think I'll still I think that'll be the day I get quit coaching, when I can't throw BP.
Yeah.
I went out on a day prior to spring training, and I overdid it. And my ulnar nerve, I think, is really, back then there was no such thing as an MRI. All you had was X-rays back then. And I think that was the third time that I had done something to my elbow over the course of about 4 years. And I pitched with it. I pitched 3 more years after I did it, but I was never the same. And, it's why most of my career was stuck in Fresno, California, after getting off to a great start in Great Falls in rookie ball and going straight to AA the next year. But when I went in there, I was hurt, and I threw a couple of times. They put me on the DL, and I was there for 2.5 months. When I finally got back, they sent me out to Fresno, and then part of the rest of that year, all the next year, and part of the next year there. I finally got a taste of AAA baseball at the end of '86, which was my 4th year. But that was really because of they just needed some experience. They just needed a guy to fill some innings,
Yeah.
They didn't want to take anybody off the AA team. And I knew that. I was around long enough to understand. I never lost objectivity. I remember the day my wife and I were driving from Fresno to Phoenix, which was a AAA club. I told her on the way out of town, I said, I want you to know something. I'm going to get released again after this season. And here I am on the day I'm getting promoted from that club to AAA, and she didn't understand that, obviously. And and that's exactly what happened in October. Got released again, and that's when I don't like the way it ended. That's starting to be a theme in my life, I think. I don't like the way things are ending. But you just move on. And, within a year, I'd finished my degree at Baylor, and I wrote 2 letters. I knew I wanted to coach. I wrote 2 letters. One was to Ron Polk at Mississippi State, and the other was to Mark Johnson at Texas A&M. They were just 2 guys I knew from my days and, growing up and back to that senior year. Well, Coach Polk, he had 4 or 5 graduate assistants back then, and he told me he had one open, and it was going to be in about 5 years from the day that I was writing the letter. He was booked graduate assistants for 5 years. Well, I said, thanks, but I'll probably find something before then. But then Coach Johnson, he wound up having something, and that's how I wound up there. He only had one, and he was offering it to me, and 2 years there, and then from there I go and I'm a full-time guy at Mississippi State. So I'd been at Mississippi State for, I think, 3 years. And I walked into Coach Polk's office and said to him, I said, you know what? This was the year I was going to be able to come here as a GA. And that was kind of a strange moment to see how all that worked out.
It's funny when you were talking about the arm issue. So I was 2 years with the Padres. They traded me to the Mets. And after a year with the Mets, they turned me into a pitcher.
Really?
And yeah. And I oddly enough, I had more success as a pitcher. I never wanted to pitch. I just didn't. I wanted to play. I wanted to hit. I wanted to swing. And they, I end up getting off to a real good start. I threw hard early. We're about mid-season. I had never, even in high school, I didn't pitch that often. I only pitched because I threw hard. But it's not something I ever really worked on. If I ever went to like a camp or if I spoke to colleges at all, it was strictly as a third baseman. I wanted to play, right? And do you know Dave Jorn?
Yeah. Yeah.
So he was my pitching coach, my first with the Mets. Yeah. And Dave Jorn, I'm down there, I'm warming up. We're playing the Indians organization, and I can feel my fastball. I had never thrown 100+ innings in my life.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm throwing my fastball, and I feel like I'm missing about 4 or 5 miles an hour. It's not hurting. Nothing's wrong, but it's just not there.
Mm-hmm.
And he comes down there and he says, how you feel, Bull? And I said, it's not good. He says, what's the matter? I said, I don't have a fastball. And he claps and says, that's perfect. And I said, why is that good? And he goes, because now you got to learn how to pitch.
Yep.
Now you got to learn how to pitch. And so, and it was one of my best games, by the way. But anyways, so you're going to Tennessee Tech now. How are you guys looking if we get back? This season's canceled. You go into next season. You got a winning ball club?
Not as we sit here right today. I got to recruit one.
Okay.
I mean, this is. I mean, it will win, and we will win. They have won here many times in the past. Matt Braga took this team in 2018 to the final game of a super regional in Austin, Texas, and then left that next year, went after that season, and he's the head coach at Rice right now. And they had about 10 guys. They had 10 guys on that team, I think, signed. So, no matter what, the 2019 year would have been a really, really difficult year, losing 10 guys. Well, you lose 10 guys plus your head coach, So I think the program is in a little bit of a transition, and I'm the one that's kind of inherited it, but I'm also the one that's taken on the challenge of getting it back to where it was, and maybe building on what Matt did, because he did a lot. He was here 14 years, and they won the Ohio Valley Conference a number of times. And that 18 club was the one that got right to the lip of the cup, and I think that gave this community kind of a taste of what that's like, to really get that kind of exposure and to get that close to Omaha. It also gave the institution, Tech itself. That's what was exciting to me, because I just think, sometimes you just need a little taste of it, and you want to do more. And this is a small community. It's a blue collar community. In baseball, it's a blue collar sport. We're extremely affordable. It's a great university, particularly on the engineering and the business side. It's a great university. So it's just got a lot of pluses. But we got, you don't do anything without players, and we got to get players.
Yeah. So speaking of the players, I was reading when you were interviewing the position, that one of the things you did, and I don't know if it was the school's choice or yours or but part of the interview process, and I don't know if it's really they were interviewing you, but you spoke to the players. You went out there, and I guess some of the players spoke to you. So what kind of questions did you get there?
Well, it was really interesting, because the process, the vetting process, the day that I came in started at 6:30 in the morning, and it went till about 6:30 in the evening. And obviously that's a really grueling thing. And they basically are spending about 45 minutes to an hour with every possible constituency group within the department, all the different functions within the athletic department. And then, about 4:30 in the afternoon, they walked me into a room, and it really took my breath a little bit, because there was like 8 to 10 players in there.
Yeah.
Now, Craig, this was December the 18th. Okay. I mean, they were done with finals for over a week. And, their coach had been in November, about a month or so before. They had lost their coach very suddenly. He was dismissed. A lot of questions, swirling around that. And all of a sudden, here these guys are, and they are buttoned up. They are clean cut. They look sharp. And I shook I just they had all their chairs lined up in a row, and they had one empty chair stationed in front of them, facing them. So I shook their hands. I turned around and I looked at that empty chair. And I turned around and looked at them, and I just said, "You fellas better enjoy this." Because they were to get their shot at grilling me.
Yeah.
Sat down, and now you got to know this. Before I even started this process with Tennessee Tech, my prayer was literally, Lord, if you don't want me to go, stop me. Because I loved Auburn. I loved the coaching staff at Auburn. I loved the coaches at Auburn. I loved everything about it. And that pitching staff that I had poured into that fall, and in some cases 2 years, I didn't want to leave.
Yeah.
I really didn't want to leave. But, this door had sort of been cracked. And so my prayer was, Lord, if you don't want me to go, just stop me. And so when I met these players, all right, shook their hands, I sat down, and the first one of them, he says, well, Coach, we just want to, thank you for being here. We want to congratulate you on the career that you've had. We've all done our homework. We've all got, we've all got questions for you, and we've done our research. And we also want to thank you for being the man of faith that you are. And I mean, the moment that kid said that, I thought, no, I was looking for a red flag,
Yeah.
I wasn't looking for a green flag. I was looking for a red one. And Craig, I sat there and they did. They had their questions. One of them I remember clearly was, what's the first team meeting going to be like?
Yeah.
And honestly, in the last 2-4 years since I've been gone from Baylor, I've thought about that. I literally had made notes to myself about what that day is going to be like. So I could speak to that pretty easily. And we connected. I'll just say it like that. There was a connection between me and them. And we had to cut it short because they had some more people for me to go see. And I remember telling them, look, guys, this is my cell number. If we didn't get to your question, text me and I'll respond to you. And I got a bunch of them. And, I know they thought they were interviewing me at that moment. They were, but I was interviewing them too. And that's the thing about it. And since I've been here, I've had a chance to go back and revisit that with them all and tell them what it was. I came here because I really believed they cared. It was December the 18th. They cared. They really cared about their baseball program. They cared about this university. They cared about the man that was going to be chosen to lead them. They really cared. And I will tell you this, Craig, as a baseball coach and as a baseball player, which you were, all we've ever wanted was people that cared. We are used to we're used to playing second fiddle as a sport. We're used to that. That's not really the deal. You just got to show me you care, And I remember as a player thinking that there was very few places that I would not go to play. If I told you some of the places besides Mississippi State that I dreamed about playing, or that I would have gone to play, they're not big time places, but they're places that cared. They cared about baseball. They cared about the sport. That's what I got from those players is I had a group of guys that cared. I was making an assumption, that the institution would care, and I questions and believe me, once you get here, you got to ask again, and you got to push because, if you want to get something done, you just got to push hard to get it done. But it had to start with the players, and they let me know by their questions and their presence, that they cared.
It's funny you talk about caring and where you wanted to go. I remember, and I was I was fortunate and I was blessed to be recruited by, some of the biggest schools. And I didn't know. My parents certainly didn't know. My dad was a truck driver, and he was never an athlete of any kind. He would go to all my games when he wasn't working. But I played catch with my dad 3 times in my life, maybe.
Really?
But, yeah. He just wasn't. He's not a sports guy at all.
Who'd you throw with?
A brick wall in my backyard. I had a tennis ball, and it never tired out.
Yeah,
and that's what I did all the time. And I felt like, I hear people talking about going to a certain school. By the way, is that my feedback? I think it is. Whether I was going to go to LSU or Mississippi State or Oklahoma State or Texas A&M, I never gauged one or the other, like which one would have the best chance of winning, because I thought I was going to go contribute. We were going to win no matter what. If I was going to go to Mississippi State, we were going to win at Mississippi State, right? If I went to A&M, we were going to win at A&M. And I hear young people today we're always looking for the best team. And I always like to believe, well, why don't you go make them the best team?
Mm-hmm.
Go make them the best team. So when you talk about caring, oh man, I can relate to it, because good Lord knows when I played, I really cared. Do we need? I think we do. These colleges, you need more scholarship money. Don't we need more money for college baseball?
Well, it's not just about the money. It's the system itself. There's 2 systems in awarding athletic aid in Division I athletics. One's by head count and one's by equivalency. And so in a head count sport, which the two biggest ones are basketball and football, everybody there is on, if you're on any aid at all, you're on a full. And so tuition, books and fees, room and board. And now you even get cost of attendance money thrown in. So what you see there in those 2 sports is the players playing those 2 sports are not just there because they can afford to play it. They're there because they're the best players.
Yeah.
Baseball is an equivalency sport. So we have the equivalent right now of 11.7 scholarships. Now, when you were coming out of high school, that number was 13. And around 91 or 92, the Knight Commission, which I think still exists, did a report and recommended to a 10% reduction in scholarships across the board of all sports. So back then, football was 95. They got cut 9 points. They got cut. They're now 85. Basketball was at 15. They got cut to 13. As I said, baseball was at 13, so we lost 1.3. That was 10% of our equivalency. That put us at 11.7. So people that have wondered how in the world did baseball ever get a crazy number like 11.7, well, that's how it happened. It's 25 years ago or more, the 10% reduction of the 13. But what's happened because of that, we have a sport that is discriminatory, and I'm going to use that word. Major League Baseball has fought to keep the African American athlete, because the number of African Americans playing Major League Baseball has gone down. And so they start the RBI program, reviving baseball in the inner cities. They do everything they can to try to attract, the young African American athlete. And they're some of the greatest athletes in our whole country, but they're all being forced to choose football or basketball as their path, as their best opportunity to get to college because of the economics. They can get a full in those 2 sports, and they can't get one in baseball. And so what you see in college baseball is the people that play the sport are literally the people that can afford to. It's not the best players. It's, so the demographic of our sport is radically different. So to your point, what we need is, we don't need more aid. We need to be a head count sport. If you made baseball a head count sport, which means that you've got some number, and let's just use the number 25. That would be a reasonable roster size. You'd have 25 guys on a college baseball team they're all on the same. They're all on fulls. I would argue that Little League baseball would change tomorrow. If an African-American mom, grandmother, dad, all of a sudden sees that their child can play college baseball on the same scholarship that he could have played college football and college basketball on, they're going to play they're going to play baseball. Especially, we wouldn't hurt basketball, but there's a ton of guys that are playing college football for the simple reason it's the only way they could get there. And it's such a sport. And so I really think that we can chase this rabbit a long ways, and it's not going to be pretty if I go down that hole very far, because we've got a system that's been put in place by a certain demographic of leader that's discriminatory against a certain demographic of society. And it's not just all about money. It's sometimes about life and death and health because of the choices they're having to make because of the systems that are in place.
Well, I think it even goes a little further too, to add to it. The youth select world has become a massive industry. I mean, it's an industry. Every time I turn around, there's a new academy opening up, and it's the new latest and greatest training, and people making promises of getting people to college, and I struggle buying into any of that. And then when I look at it, it's expensive. We have my son. We're up in the Northeast. We're in a school district called the Klein School District, and you'll have a school called Klein Collins, Klein Kane, Klein Oak. Those 4 of the 5 schools that are in that district are going to be pretty competitive. Then you have a school called Klein Forest, and it's more inner city demographics, and they just take a beating. And it's not because they lack athletes. Their basketball team went to the state finals last year, and they're loaded with athletes. The problem is they're behind the 8 ball because these kids don't play. They can't invest, sometimes $500 to $1,000 a month on travel. So, but again, that's kind of a whole other fix.
Now, let me take that one on.
Yeah.
The reason that exists, Craig, is because the market is there. The only market that exists in baseball is for wealthy people. So what if we had 25 fulls, and all of a sudden those guys over there at Klein Forest that play basketball or are playing football, those dudes now they're playing Little League baseball. I would argue that select teams are going to pop up all over the place that won't be money driven, that won't cost the cost of select baseball come down. Because now all of a sudden, those teams that are down there in Houston that are charging obscene amount of money, they also want to win, and they want they want the best players. Now the best players are playing everywhere. Right now, only the wealthy are playing. Not just the wealthy, but the ones that can afford it.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people that aren't wealthy that are playing college baseball. All right, but they are sacrificing big time to do it, and I'm just saying this: we don't have the best athletes doing it. We have the best athletes that can afford to do it, and I say that's even true in select baseball. And the whole thing is being driven by the scholarship model in Division I, NCAA Division I baseball. Change that model, it'll change Little League, it'll change select baseball, it'll change a lot of things, all for the good.
Yeah, that's interesting, and I think it's important for anybody that hears this. We're not trying to drop a blanket statement here. Obviously, there's some inner city schools with good baseball programs, so it's not a blanket statement. It just seems to be the opinion that I've had when I watch them. They just seem to be behind the 8 ball, and it probably goes into what you're saying. I mean, it's very fair. I want to jump into. You talked about Auburn, and you felt like it was a great fit. I got to tell you something. Without even knowing all the reasons why. When I heard you were going to Auburn, and I don't even know why, I felt good about it. it seemed like that was a good fit. I watched you closely last year in 19, and really there's just the last game, that last inning, the last play that kept you guys from going from a World Series. Your pitching was pretty darn good. You had some good guys on your staff. How crushing for the right fielder who had a break on the play how did he handle that? The guy that
back to 18.
Oh, it was 18.
18.
Oh, that's right, because 19.
18 Super Regional Championship at Florida.
Yes.
And,
yeah.
Yep. I thought we battled like crazy, and we've got freshman pitchers that year. Tanner Burns, who will be a first rounder this year, was a freshman. Cody Greenhill. We rode those two guys pretty hard. Casey Mize was the first overall pick in the draft.
Yeah.
Casey was probably the most, not probably, was the most professional ready, major league ready college pitcher I'd ever been around. And then, his legacy will live on at Auburn for a long time because his work ethic was just second to none. And so Tanner kind of followed in his footsteps. But you're talking about in the third game at Florida, we're in extra innings, and they hit a ball that the Florida is a bandbox to begin with, the old park. They're building a new one now, but that park is really small, and the outfield fence in right is only like 4 feet. So it's one of those short chain link. And, Stephen Williams, who was a converted catcher at that time, playing the outfield, had made many plays. He'd made a play earlier in that game nobody even talked about. He ran a ball down in the right center field gap, again, where that fence was 4 feet tall, and he caught it above his head running towards the fence. That, he saved us a run there. So, but it was a tough way to end. The ball bounced off his glove, went off, I think might have went off his shoulder or something, and went over. And so we lose that Super Regional. Well, jump last year to 2019. Same kid, Stephen Williams. We're in the regional final at Georgia Tech. We're down by 2, I believe. Yep, we're down by 2 in the bottom of the 9th. He's at the plate with an 0-2 count and 2 outs. Their starter's on the mound, left-handed, been there the whole game. He hangs him a breaking ball, and he hits a walk-off 3-run home run to win that regional championship game right then. And we go on to North Carolina the next weekend. He hits a 3-run home run over there. We win that Super. We go to Omaha. We have to open up with Mississippi State in Omaha. When we had played them in the regular season, it was like the second weekend of the year. We had won 1 game over there, and then we just got boat raced. The next a really good offensive club. We were down. We had 2 starters that were out that weekend, and they just beat up a young bullpen. But, that was a crushing defeat because we've got that game won in the 9th inning. We throw a ball away, and but I was proud. I was proud of our pitchers. Last year was tough because we were very young. We lost some guys. We lost our number 1 the first game of the season. We were just down in terms of arms. That's why I was so looking forward to seeing them this year. They're loaded, and I hate it for them that they didn't get to play. And then really, Craig, I grew up in the SEC, and so it was great for me to come back and be around the league. And again, we already talked about being around people that care about it. They really care about it. Every place in that league cares about baseball. And, I just hated to see that league not get to play along with every other league in the country. But, I know what's invested there, and I just hated to see it happen.
Yeah. I didn't know that he got to come back and redeem himself. What a great story.
Well, he did. It was awesome. Last year in 19, he did. He hit an 0-2 breaking ball left on left. out of the park. It was the most surreal thing. It was almost like time stopped. I mean, the ball is going up.
Yeah.
You knew the moment it left the bat, you knew it was out.
Right.
And it's like it took forever for it to go out. It was just in
Oh,
slow
beautiful.
motion. It was cool.
When you're at Baylor, you're there 21 years. Fair to say that you made them into real contenders. You had a 50-win season. You had a trip to the College World Series, several super regionals. That's a long time, man. That's a long tenure. Were you? Yeah, I know you had to enjoy your time there. How'd you feel when that was over?
Well, let me say this: it's a different experience when you're coaching at your alma mater.
Yeah.
Okay. And honestly, I would tell anybody if they could choose the period of time in their career to do that, I think it would be better done at the end of your career, because it's just really hard in the world today for anything to end well. You know, if it's going to go 20 years, I mean, that's just really hard to do.
Yeah.
And so when I went there, I was young, and you know, they were just getting into the Big 12. They were proud to get in the Big 12. We won some pretty quick. So, you know, I had a president, Dr. Robert Sloan, who's the president of Houston Baptist now, and I had an athletic director in Tom Stanton, who was a former baseball player at Baylor, and they got behind our program personally. And so we got the ballpark built. We got the stadium built. And ironically, the one we kind of modeled it after was at Auburn. We hired the same architects, and
Wow.
It's very, very similar. It was kind of painful to be at Auburn for that problem, because I knew where all the closets were in the ballpark. But those two guys, we wouldn't have got it done without them. And you know, and everything is really good. We're really competing. We're doing a lot of great things. And around 03, 04, Baylor had, you know, the murder in the basketball program, in the men's program, and that was a tragedy, you know. And it wound up ultimately it cost the basketball coach his job. It ultimately came down on the athletic director, and ultimately it came down the president. And so, you know, the two biggest supporters I had internally, they're gone. And, you know, and it's my alma mater, so I was never against winning in football. I mean, I love football. I mean, I want to be where we win in football. But this was my school, and I wasn't willing to win at all costs. And the culture started to change. And sometimes, and you know people like this, sometimes you forget who you are. Sometimes you forget where you came from. Sometimes you forget what you stand on. Sometimes you forget, when I say forget who you are, I mean forget what you believe, you know, and you compromise a lot of things on the altar of success and the altar of winning. And, you know, that started happening. Now, at the same time, we're not, you know, it ain't like we won pretty good. I mean, 2015, we got ranked #1 in the country for the first time in this program's history. Mm-hmm. And 3 years later, I was fired. Was I happy that day it happened? No, I wasn't. I was shocked, because I couldn't believe that I could, you know, that someone would fire me who hadn't talked to me in 5 years.
Right.
But but I also was miserable. And I had prayed, and I've already shared with you, I pray. And I had prayed that day, Lord, if you don't want me here, move me. I had been praying that for weeks, not because I thought it was going to happen, but because I had been offered 2 chances to leave Baylor, you know, in my time there, both of them in the SEC, and I had stayed. And so I thought the Lord had offered me doors, and I had not taken them. And so I just said, Lord, if you don't want me here, move me. Well, how's that going to happen? You know, and it happened. And yeah. You know what? I wasn't ready. My career wasn't over. I wasn't ready to stop. I mean, I just I wasn't ready. I was ready
Yeah.
to stop. I was ready to stop there. Now I'm happy. I think they've gone through in a year after I was gone, they went through, the worst case of, sexual assault in the history of the NCAA, and they're still dealing with it. But I also think they've responded, and I'm proud of my university. I mean, they're my university.
Yeah.
But I'd be lying to you. I'd be lying to everybody if I didn't say they lost track of who they were. And that was at the very top of the food chain, board, athletic director, everybody. And I think they're back to, and they're still winning. That was the best thing about what happened to them last year. Matt Rule did a great job there, and they had an unbelievable year. And you know what? They did it the right way.
Yeah.
And I think everybody can be proud of that.
Well, I tell you, a lot of people who are younger who haven't played beyond high school, or maybe are just getting into high school, it's good to hear that story, because college baseball for you, maybe not for the player yet, but for you, it becomes a business. It's personal, right? It's a personal deal. We want to win. We want to, you want to treat all the kids right, and you want to groom them for life, and you have all these different goals, and each coach has different goals, but it's a business, and sometimes business gets ugly. Sometimes it doesn't go our way. And I think it's a hard thing for a young man I didn't have any idea, beyond high school, that it was more than just a game, that it was a business. And sometimes the only times you really realize that a business is when it doesn't go your way. Because when things are going your way, it doesn't seem like much of a business until it's not your way. And,
well, I thought this is the problem I had at Baylor in hindsight.
Yeah.
In hindsight, the problem I had is I thought I was working for the family business. I thought I was family.
Yeah.
I had played there. I had gotten a degree there. My wife was a cheerleader there. Our roots were deep there. So things that happened on campus that didn't have anything to do with baseball, they mattered to me.
Yeah.
Things that happened that completely unrelated to athletics, they mattered to me, because I loved the university, because I loved what it stood for. And at the end of the day, I worked for the family business, but at the end of the day, we weren't family.
Yeah.
And that's, so to your original question, I would compare the end of it. My first time at Baylor was in 1980, and I left in 2015. That's 35 years. That's tough. That's a 35. That's a divorce of a 35-year marriage.
Yeah, it stinks.
Yep.
Yeah, for sure. I'll tell you, I want to share a story before we go into some of the Mississippi State years. I guess it was about 5 years ago when you guys were in 2015. I brought my now 16-year-old. We had us and a couple friends, and we were coming to Waco. And you had a home game, and I reached out to you and I said, "Hey, Coach, I'm bringing my youngest son." And I thought it would be really fun to introduce him to someone that had recruited me and somebody I admired. And you said, "Come on down, man." And after the game, come on down to the field. So we went down to the field afterwards after a Baylor Bears victory. You guys won. And I said something about my mother would be excited about this. And you said, "How's George and Sue?" And I said, "There's no way you're that good."
You can blame your mom with those Christmas cards, buddy, because I can still see her handwriting.
I don't know if you remember me asking. I said, "How in the world?" Because they didn't have Excel spreadsheets back then. How in the world are you remembering their names?
Hey, baby, you could really hit. I remember your parents.
Hey, do you? I'll tell you what you said. You said, I said, "I don't know how you could ever remember that. That's amazing to me." And you said, "I don't know how I could ever forget." And you came to Texas. The story was, and this is what I'll kind of prequel into the Mississippi State years and tell you how I felt about some of that. But you had just gotten to Mississippi State with Ron Polk. You convinced Coach Polk, to let you recruit some guys out of Texas
Yep.
that you had some targets on.
Yep.
And he said no one's going to want to come to Mississippi.
Yep.
And I don't know if it was 4 or 5 guys. How many was it that you were recruiting?
That was good. It was 6, maybe 5, 6. Yeah.
And I'm embarrassed to say I'm the only one that did not go. Is that right?
No,
I think you told me that.
There might have been one more, but I remember Pokey. I'd been at A&M for 2 years watching those 2 guys compete with Texas.
Yeah.
And the guy doing all the recruiting then at A&M was Jimmy Lawler. And that dude, he just was recruiting all the time.
Yeah.
Well, when I got to Mississippi State, I'd been there for about 2 months. And I hadn't even heard the word recruit yet. And I think because Coach Polk had just been doing it out of camps, and it just wasn't the kind of emphasis on it as it was at A&M with them trying to catch up to Texas. And so I walked into his office one day, and I put down this piece of paper that had like 5 or 6 names on it from the state of Texas, yours included. And he looked at it, and he said to me, "Why would these guys want to come to Mississippi State?" And this is exactly what I said to him. I said, "Coach Polk," I said, "all of these guys go to a high school in Texas that's a football school that plays baseball.
Yeah.
Mississippi State is a baseball school that plays football." And
Right.
old Polk, he loved that, man. That just fired him up so much. He turned around, he handed me that list back. He said, "Go get them." So that's exactly how that thing went down. And I did. And that, that trip to, I came, who I saw before I got to your house on the
Who's
same
that?
day?
Who?
Brooks Kieschnick.
Yeah, I know it.
Kieschnick. I was in Corpus watching Brooks Kieschnick play in a vacant lot, basically. It was like the first year the UIL was letting, varsity players play fall baseball, way back.
Yeah.
That would shock your listeners today. And I remember watching Brooks, and I didn't even have a radar gun. I didn't have a gun with me. I didn't have a stopwatch. And I'm watching this kid. He looked like a man amongst little bitty boys out there. And if I saw Brooks today, I'd tell him, "Brooks, I really like the way you ran." Now, who in the world ever looked at Brooks Kieschnick and said, "I like the way you ran"?
Yeah, right.
I mean, the guy turned it, but he just was an athlete.
Yeah.
And I was young and crazy. And, we had that dude committed to Mississippi State. All right. And back in those days, the coaches could go and individually sign everybody.
Yeah.
And so Coach Polk, he loved doing that. He loved going to their homes, and signing.
Right.
Well, obviously, if you do that, you can't be everywhere on signing day. So it was like 2 weeks after signing day, and Coach Polk is making his plans to go to Corpus Christi to sign Brooks Kieschnick. And Brooks calls him and says, "Coach, I want you to know I signed with Texas."
Oh,
and I mean, I was so upset. Coach Polk, he things don't bother him a whole lot. And
right.
I think
Right.
at the time we had so many guys committed, he thought, well, that's just one I ain't got to worry about.
Yeah.
And Brooks Kieschnick wound up being a national player of the year. He's a daggum big leaguer,
Yeah. I think he kind of turned the. I don't know. Did he pitch in the big leagues too? I think he might have one of the first two-way players.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oddly enough, on Facebook today, I saw a post that I think he shared of him saying goodbye at UT to the fans.
I saw the same thing, and I congratulated him. Yep.
Yeah, maybe that's why I saw it, because I was looking you up. Maybe that's why I saw it. And that was pretty cool. I talked to him. We were in a fantasy football league the last couple of years together. But him, I remember there was that year Todd Van Poppel was the big name everybody was trying to shoot for. But Mississippi State, I know Ricky Joe Red. I think he ended up signing with you guys.
Yeah, we got Ricky Joe. The other guy, we signed Todd Ritchie. He was the other guy.
Yes.
It was Ritchie and Steve Gibraltar and Ricky Joe Red. I'm trying to think. Ricky Joe might have been the only one that showed up. Todd Ritchie wound up being a first rounder and signed, and Gibraltar signed.
Steve Gibraltar with the Reds.
Yeah. But
he got drafted that year.
But we did start getting some guys, some good players. And I just felt like, to be honest with you, that part of Mississippi, It looks a lot like East Texas, you know. And let's face it, man, those people care about it. And if you saw their ballpark today,
Yeah.
oh my. So give it about, we're probably 5 to 10 years, but you just wait and see what everybody else in that league does. But they have started it. You know, they started it back in the mid 70s, late 70s when they built Duty Noble the first time, or wait a minute, that'd been mid 80s.
They still got the truck beds out there in the outfield.
They got daggum apartments out there now.
Oh man, I like the truck beds.
Well, it's classed up. It doesn't look like Sanford and Sons anymore. It's a lot classier.
I'll tell you, going back to, I didn't know the reason you knew my parents' names. You came to my house. I think it was a school night. I didn't know that your car didn't start, and I guess you had to get it switched. But I guess my mother, she stayed up till 2 or 3 in the morning with you as a host, and that's why you said that you remembered their names. But
yep, you had to go to bed. It was a Sunday night, and you had to go to bed. And you know, I go out there to start the car, and it won't start. I mean, holy cow! I think it was my first recruiting trip out of town. I know, as an assistant at Mississippi State.
Yeah.
And I had been Phoenix to Corpus to Houston, and that car wouldn't start. And gosh, I was on a flight at I left your house about 3 o'clock in the morning, and my flight out of Hobby was at 6:30. So I don't even think I went to a hotel.
Yeah, you couldn't have. I'll tell you this. So I've told you this. My deepest regret, you know, we all have a few of them, but my deepest one is through my whole process was not signing at Mississippi State. It came down to 4 schools.
I'm gonna quote you on that later, okay?
You can, and but I'm gonna tell a couple of reasons why. My dream as a boy was to go to Oklahoma State because they were always on TV.
Yeah.
You know, I saw, you had Pete Incaviglia and Robin Ventura, and they were hitting all these bombs, and I said, that's where I want to go, man. I want to go hit bombs. Yeah, I want to go hit bombs Oklahoma State. So when I got my letter from Gary Ward to come up and do a visit there, I said, it's over.
Yeah,
it's over. I mean, it's all over. And I go to Stillwater, and I hated every second of it. I just did. I said, man, I didn't feel what I felt before I'd gone there. So A&M had the hometown discount. I'd gone to LSU, and Skip Bertman was great. I liked them a ton. And nothing against Mark Johnson and A&M because it's a fantastic program. At the time, I think they had just gotten the #1 ranking too, so the program was big, and they were winning, and Mark Johnson was doing a great job, and it had a lot of the same feel. But when I got to Starkville, it just felt like home to me. and I don't know why, but I think a lot of
it was in pine trees, man.
I don't know what it was. It was you and Coach Polk, though. And he had to do this, for everybody. But you mentioned 2 guys that you reached out to. You mentioned Ron Polk and Mark Johnson. Yep. This is incredibly coincidental. When I got out of baseball in '96, I went back to school and got my degree in business management. It was a very difficult thing to do. You're starting school at 25 years old. And I did it. And when I graduated, I reached out by phone to call 2 people. The first one was Ron Polk. And I called him because he wrote me a letter every single year of my pro career.
Yep.
Encouraging me not to forget about an education, that it would serve me well one day.
Yep.
And I still have them. I was going to have them. I was going to show them. I have them put away right now. So I called him and thanked him that despite the fact that I didn't even sign with him, that he took time to write me every year, which is it's crazy. And then the second one was to Mark Johnson, and he motivated me in a different way. When I had got drafted, I was talking. He was calling me. They were calling me every 30 minutes that day, every 20 minutes. Have you heard anything? Have you heard anything? And I get drafted in the 7th round, and when I finally told him that I was going to go to the Padres, he asked me. He said, "What about college, Craig?" And I said, "Well, they're putting in 8 semesters of college. And he said, well, you know why they're offering you that? And I said, no. He says, because you'll never use it. And I said, I think I would. And he goes, well, what makes you so different? He gave me statistics of people who go pro out of high school, how they don't go back, and the ones that do don't finish.
Yep.
I said, well, I think I'll finish. And he says, statistics say you won't. But anyways, I didn't realize the business side of him. And I didn't know about scholarships. I just know what I was getting, because he was telling me, Craig, we can take your scholarship. I can go give it to 3 or 4 guys. But we gave this to you. We want you here. And he was still trying, he was trying to protect his recruit. And unfortunately, my mind was made up. And also, by the way, at 48 years old, at 35 years old, I'd have told you I wouldn't change a thing. At 48, I would tell every player, unless you're going to get a 7-digit bonus check, that you should go to college. I just would tell them all. I think it would have benefited me a great deal. And I wish I'd have done it. But I wish I'd have done it as a Bulldog. And so I had to call you. You were the one I called. The night before I was going to tell A&M. I'd already told LSU I didn't want to go. I told them. I said, I got to call you. And I sat on the couch for about 20 minutes before I dialed the number, because I was like, I don't know if I can tell him. Because my heart said I really wanted to go, and I went against what I really wanted. And that's when I said, if I had, for the rest of my life, I was going to go with my gut. I was going to go with what my gut wanted. And but I called and told you, and of course you were as gracious as ever, and you made me feel good about the choice. And I was hoping you would sell me more, but you spoke very, very highly of A&M, and so.
I had to, man. They were great people, and
They are.
I'd been there. Gosh, it hadn't even been a year since I'd been there.
Yeah. Now it was. I wish I'd gone. The whole recruiting process, it's got to be way different now, right?
Oh yeah, the timing of it is way different. So it's happening so much earlier now that the whole visit. The thing I missed the most is those visits.
Yeah.
The thing I liked about those visits, through the years was I really learned a lot about the kid and how he interacted with his parents. You just learn about the character, and just you just learn about him. And we don't get to do that anymore. It's very rare. I actually think I may get to do that more here, because the pace here at a mid-major is not the same. It's not quite the same time schedule it is, in a Power 5. But that's something from a NCAA legislative thing that everybody's trying to put their arms around it, because nobody in the 10th grade needs to be, picking their college. Nobody, and there's some cases it's the 8th grade. I mean, we don't even, parents wouldn't even let them. They wouldn't even let them borrow the car. They ain't going to give them the keys of the car or leave them at home for a weekend, but they're going to let them pick their college, in the 8th, 9th, or 10th grade. And it's that part of it is run amok. But
what's the benefit? I struggle with that. I see players who they make these verbal commitments as freshmen and sophomores, and my thought is, and maybe I don't know. It seems like though. They're taking away all their options at a very early spot. Because I mean, if I'm a sophomore in high school and I commit to Auburn, obviously that's not a legally binding agreement, right? We don't have anything in place
on either side.
On either side, right?
Yeah.
So if I have a bad year, Auburn can change their mind. Or if all of a sudden they get a better look and I'm not the player they thought I was, they can change their mind. But I may be missing opportunities from, the Mississippi States of the world, the Tennessee Techs of the world, people who may give me opportunities that are better fits that you might not even come recruit me now. I mean, is that fair?
Oh yeah, it is. I mean, because what happens in baseball, once that guy commits somewhere, everybody else just basically quits even watching him. They don't really see him. And let's face it now, I mean, we as people, we change. Guys change. I mean, the girls we were in love with in the 9th grade are not the girls we were in love with as seniors in high school. And I know that's maybe a little bit of a bad analogy, but there's a lot of truth there. People change, and bodies change, skill sets change. You know, the makeup of a team changes, and I mean, let's face it. We've talked about this at the beginning. These coaches, they've got an obligation to their institution. They got an obligation to themselves and to their family. So you commit when you're, 10th grade. 9th, 10th grade, a lot of things are going to change in 3 years. And if they, that guy's going to do what's in his best interest. And if you may have taken yourself off the market,
Yeah,
a little
that's
early.
what I tend to say that too. But, I think when it goes into the youth sports, there's so many people that are guiding these people. If I had a nickel for every time somebody called themselves a scout, I'd be a rich man. But I see it all the time. I just don't know if they're getting the best information. Social media, how does that help with recruiting? Do you check social media? You check the players' social media?
Yeah. That's the thing I think players need to be careful about. Everybody, and I'm not talking about just me, but I mean, you're going to get vetted by, I mean, once a guy, just pick anywhere. Once a guy signs somewhere, or once he commits, once he's on their radar and they're going to bring him in on a visit, or they're going to make him an offer, they're getting the papers worked up, their compliance office is going to go and they're going to go through his background, all of his tweets. I mean, I've had some pretty interesting phone calls. Just in this, and even my time at Baylor about, this guy tweeted such and such. It might have been a very harmless thing, maybe in where he lived, in the culture of the environment where he lived. His choice of tweet words was not offensive, but you know what? You put that out on the World Wide Web, and what's not offensive in South Louisiana gets very offensive in, New York State. And so you just got to be careful. You got to be really careful about that. And let me back up on that. You don't have to be careful. You just need to be a good person.
Yeah, exactly.
You know what? If you'll just think about what you do, and we all have to do, I have to do that. And my wife would tell you that I don't do a good job of it. I've tried to abstain, totally on social media from, anything that won't make somebody smile. I just think I want it to be a positive thing. There was a few years ago that, I was like so many other people. Every political position that I supported, I was there, man. And I was pounding that pavement as hard as anybody. I thought, this is so stupid. I mean, people's political positions, where I grew up, that was a pretty personal affair. It's a pretty private thing. You didn't ask somebody who they're voting for anymore. You ask them how much they made, and all of a sudden we're airing that out, for the whole world. And so I've kind of backed off on that. I just think, social media is there to make people feel better and brighten their day and pass along great stories and inspire. And, and if that recruits somebody, if that's attractive to somebody, then so be it. If it isn't, in the environment we're in today, as we sit here today with the game being shut down, I've noticed that players are really taken to social media with video. There's more bullpens being thrown on video right now and tweeted out than I've ever seen. And that's a good thing for them.
Yeah.
Because they're having a chance to get, to be seen at a time when we can't personally be there. And so that's a real positive thing about it.
Yeah. I sometimes you talk about being a good person. Obviously that comes with good parenting. my mother, even in my 40s, if I were to say the word, if I said the word damn, which I wouldn't in front of her, but if I did, she'd still say, Craig Anthony, you don't need to be saying that word. And so you can imagine what it was like if I was a kid to say something like that. That's a big problem now. Is the source to find the best talent still scouts?
Not at all. That's another really, really big change. Craig, when you were coming out, that was definitely, the scouts and the college coaches really leaned on scouts because they were the guys out there. There wasn't a central place to go see players. Well, I don't know, 20 years ago, maybe 25 now, Perfect Game comes along. And over time, that organization has just grown to the point where, 3 weeks in Atlanta, in the summer, and you'll pretty much see 75, 80% of the Division I players in the whole country, and they're just bringing them to you. And on top of that, college guys, because of the age thing, they're going and watching 15-year-olds, 16-year-olds. So it's kind of reversed a little bit, where the pro guy that's your buddy, he's asking you, who's the next guy coming up? Because he's too busy watching, the draft eligible guys, and you're watching guys that are 2 years younger. I think the relationship, pro wise and between pro ball and college ball has probably never been better. Both between the scouts and coaches, but even with, major league level play, executives. I mean, how many college guys have you seen here in the last 2 years have been hired?
Right.
You've got guys, you got two pitching coaches that I know of, Wes Johnson and Derek Johnson, that are, walked right off of college baseball fields, at least in the case of Wes, right into the Minnesota Twins pitching coach job. Derek went from Vanderbilt into player development with the Cubs and eventually the pitching job with the Brewers and now the Reds. That was unheard of before 2 or 3 years ago. And you see, the drive line phenomenon. You have so many guys now that are being hired right out of that company, in player development roles, in pitching roles, all across. They're assistant pitching coaches now at the big league level, because you got to have the guy, who's the crusty old veteran who played it, because he's got it. You sort of got to have that guy. But you know what? He don't know anything about Rapsodo, and he don't know anything about spin rates and pitch design. And you got these young guys that are coming out of Driveline that that know that. And I mean, to the point where the very creator of Driveline, Kyle Boddy, gets hired by Cincinnati. I mean, he's running their entire player development minor league pitching program now. That's just incredibly different. That's a real change. And I think you'll see that continue. I think you'll see more and more college pitching guys, maybe even college hitting guys, but for sure pitching. You'll see more and more of that going back and forth between Major League Baseball and college baseball. It hasn't been unusual at all in the NFL or with it hadn't been unusual with the NFL, and it hasn't been unusual in the NBA to have that. But it had been unheard of in professional baseball. Now it's not.
One of the best managers that I had in the minor leagues was a guy named Dave Tremley. And Dave Tremley ended up being a manager for the Baltimore Orioles in the big leagues, and he was a bench coach for the Houston Astros. But in a time when data wasn't abundant, he came out of a college. He'd never played just not a day of pro ball. And probably was one of the best things for me. He was a really good manager because he was really into the details of not just playing, but being a professional. And as a 19-year-old, I had no idea what being a professional was. And I'll give you a hint of the things that I could name 50 things that he taught me. But one of them, one time, I think I struck out the inning, and I go out there and I take off my stuff and I go out to third base, and we're between innings and I'm throwing across the diamond. And in between throwing, as he's rolling the ball to second base and shortstop, I'm kind of thinking about what I was doing. I had my hands like, what am I doing here? And I go back in after the inning was over, and he says, "Hey, Bull, come here. Let me talk to you." I say, "What's up, Dave?" And he goes, "Hey, when you go out in the field, man, I don't need a hitter. I need a third baseman.
Mm-hmm.
And you work on hitting when we're on offense. Leave all that stuff alone. Work on and little things like that." I tell if I'm working with a kid, I tell him that listen, strikeouts over, right? But we're going to fix that in a minute. Right now, you got to go do your job. And I hear people say things like a kid, hey, go to third base if you're coaching a kid. Well, I'm not a third baseman. What do you play? I'm a shortstop. I don't know how to play third base. Here's how you do it, man. When the ball comes to you, catch it, and then throw it to somebody else who can catch it. That's how you play third base, man. So it's not hard stuff. Well, Coach, I think if you stick with this baseball, man, it might work out for you. You gotta hang in there.
I hope so, because I don't know what else I can do, man.
I know it.
I don't know if I'm doing it very well, but I'm doing it enough that somebody's still paying me a little bit.
I want to talk about one more thing before we take off.
All right.
It's one of the things I admire most about you is that we could talk about baseball for hours and go into story after story after story. But I do admire, we talk about being a good person, I know that is led by your faith in Christ. And you share it, in social media and in times when, unfortunately, the world doesn't find it to be very cool, right? And you do it anyway because we're told to as Christians, and it's something that I admire you. And I want to thank you for doing that.
Thank you. But, I'm one beggar trying to show another beggar where to find bread. I mean,
That's right.
I'm just a guy. God, I really believe this. This has been a journey for me. This whole coaching thing, because what it's taught me is the Lord. I think I would have been a better football coach. I think I would have been, in some ways, would have enjoyed it more because you can yell and scream and you can. You almost are paid to lose control sometime, and, yeah. but, baseball is not like that. And so, baseball is about not having control, as a coach. I mean, you don't, my gosh, you can control practice and you can put a lineup up and you can sit there and watch. I mean, there's so very little control that a coach has in baseball. And there is so much truth to that in life. And so what do you do? What do you do in life? What do people do right now? The whole world right now is being confronted with the reality because of a virus that has affected the entire planet. The entire planet has been humbled, and the entire planet is being confronted with the fact that they don't have control. We don't have control. Well, for those of us that believe in a sovereign God who's loving, we're okay. We're okay. We know God's in control, and God's got a plan, and God's going to make all things good. He's going to make all things new. But those that don't have that belief, don't have that faith, what do they do? Where do they go with that? And that's really, as I kind of walk through my years in baseball, particularly as a head coach, because a head coach is way different than being an assistant coach. The most fun I've had, you talk about fun, the most fun that I've had in baseball as a coach was my 5 years at Mississippi State and my 2.5 years at Auburn. It was awesome. The relationships with players and fans and just people, you're in a different place as a head coach, and it's hard. It's just really hard. And I just felt like the Lord has used baseball to show me a lot of things about myself and to show me a lot of things about him. And, baseball is not an end to itself. It's a means to a greater end. I've tried to say that to my players here right now. Because, obviously, like a lot of players out there, they're very upset, their season's being, ending and everything. And,
how many times were you told as a player, you know, guys, you know, baseball is a lot like life. You know, life is hard. Baseball's hard. You know, life's not fair. Baseball's not fair. Well, okay, guess what, guys? That's just what happened. Okay, don't ask the question, why is it happening? Ask the question, what is the Lord trying to teach me with it? And that's been the lesson for me. It's been the lesson for me. You know, I 10, 12 years ago, I was offered a job, you know, and I chose to stay at Baylor. It was the most difficult decision I ever had. And it brought me to my knees at a time when I just had to say, Lord, what is this all about? Why am I feeling like this? I've got a great opportunity here to go somewhere else, but I'm feeling like I need to stay. Why? What are you trying to teach me? And I'm telling you, Craig, as clear as I'm talking to you right now, the Lord said, I'm trying to teach you humility. Oh man, I'm a tough student, man. I'm a tough teach, because he's been working on me right up through the day I got fired, right through being a volunteer assistant, right through not getting a job, right through being a volunteer at Santa Clara, to being a volunteer, you know, at Auburn, and now I get to ply my trade in Cookeville, Tennessee. The Lord's still working on me, and I don't know what people do that, you know, really in a time like we're in right now. What do you do if you don't have faith?
Well, I tell you, it's funny. I'll share something that hits home. You're also looking at, I know this may be hard to believe, but you're also looking at a very stubborn, bullheaded fellow on the other hand. But
I think the apple didn't fall very far from the two trees.
That's right. That's right. I will tell you, I remember getting released in '96, and I remember it's one of the few times I remember sobbing. I put my head down in my hands, and I cried. And the coaches, it's kind of weird. They just kind of sit there and let you do it, because they had been there too. This is all something that we go through.
Yeah.
Right. Only what people don't realize, only a handful of guys, you know, the Nolan Ryans of the world, get to leave when they want. Most of us have to be pushed out, you know, until it's over. Stop playing. But I stopped for a good 40 seconds, and I collected myself. And for the next couple of years, I was lost, and I kept thinking, I was going to school, and I had every odd job you can imagine, just to have an income, because it turns out your resume, the business world's not looking for a good hitter, you know, or a hard-throwing right-hander. So, and I didn't want to play. I didn't want to, you know, you get all these numbers to go call these guys for independent ball. And I just realized that, you know, I knew I had been scouted for 7 years in pro ball, because they have all the pro scouts still. And if I wasn't getting calls, then they didn't want me. So I wasn't going to call them and beg for a job. And for a long time, I kept thinking, you know, what's my plan B? And just like you, I feel like the Lord spoke to me. I didn't see, you know, lightning strike or thunder roll, but it was as clear as a bell. And the message to me was, this is all part of plan A. There is no plan B. You are living plan A. And a pastor one time, one that I'm very close with, a guy named Pastor Richard Rodriguez at Christian Life Center in Kingwood, Texas. I heard him talk about one time thanking God in advance. And I tend to pray now in advance. I thank him for what's to come, because I have faith that it's coming. And when he told me that, man, it just resonated. And so instead of praying how we get through this, I tend to pray that I tend to give thanks, Lord, that I know we're going to get through it. And I'm thinking that whatever his timeline is, it's coming. So,
amen.
But Coach, I'm honored you did it. I can't tell you how much I admire you, and this has been a thrill for me.
You're kind. I appreciate it. It's awesome for me too, man. To know where this all started 30 years ago, and to be sitting here talking to you now, it's pretty cool.
Coach, thank you, man. Take care of your family, and you'll be in the prayers here, and I'll hopefully see you on the field soon.
Thanks, buddy.
Coach, take care.
You bet. Bye.
Bye.